to bottom from last night up until now, and I know we've got several storms at least coming into central Mississippi later on tonight. So you can do that by going to supertalk.fm, making sure you have your SuperTalk Mississippi app downloaded and your weather alerts on. And we have put Rhino on call so he can break through at any time if needed for inclement weather. We want to keep you safe. Another way to keep you safe, though, is just bringing the light to some of the more darker topics that can be swirling around, and May offers us the opportunity to do that. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. If you happen to be over at supertalk.fm, you'll see I'm not alone today in the Good Things studio. I got lots of smiling faces. I have with me Jill Gordon. She is the founder and executive director of Enrich, Mississippi. I've got Mr. Will, who is the chair of Enrich, Mississippi's leadership team, their teenage team, and then also Miss Alicia Parker-Cummins, and she is with Sycamore Psychiatric. So welcome all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, Jill, I'm going to pitch it to you because I know this is a topic you're passionate about. If people have heard Enrich here on Good Things, they think teen vaping, which obviously we want to still, smash that out or stamp that out or whatever you want to call it. Put it out, blow it out, turn it off. I'm sure you have a better
ditch the vape.
Ditch the vape. I was waiting for the little one-liner you probably use more often. But the other tier to what you want to do with Enrich is also to help bring awareness to mental health issues, specifically for our high school, middle school, teenage, child sort of group. So where did that passion come from?
Well, my family suffered a loss when I was 18 years old. My cousin died by suicide. And so it's been something I've experienced in my family, the hurt that the loved ones often, have. But it was part of my original plan for Enrich, Mississippi, and the vaping was such a success and it was so needed that I really focused a lot on that, and some recent developments in my family and in Will's life have really put the gas pedal on what we want to do with this. Vaping and mental health are related 100%. In the Virtual Vaping Summit and some of the materials and podcasts that we've produced, Dr. Dan Edney definitely shares his experience with the correlation of that. So it goes hand in hand. Addiction and mental health go hand in hand, and we want to educate people. Our teens are having some major issues right now that they're dealing with, like always, but unfortunately, the substances and some of the things that they're dealing with are a little harder than when I was young. So we want to definitely bring some awareness around that.
And one of the ways you do that is you have created this leadership team. How many people or how many teens like Will are on the leadership team?
I think we have about 16 teens right now. Will is the chair. Will, why don't you tell them a little bit about it?
Right. So basically the youth leadership team, it's really just a bunch of middle school and some high school students. Kind of, from hearing it from an adult perspective, it's kind of like your kid just thinks that they're just kind of jump down my throat and whatnot. But what we've tried to create is something that where they can feel like they're talking to a friend. And, that's kind of just our main purpose, is to make it come like that rather than an adult or whatnot.
So how do you get it? How do you understand the mission of Enrich, Mississippi, that we're not just a bunch of, hillbilly adults that are trying to take away all the fun from you, but we also, want to keep you safe and protective by educating you on the different things like vaping, but then also, maybe put out a hand or a hug when it comes to things that are, causing you mental distress.
Right. So, we've kind of just, we went online, we created a TikTok and whatnot, a little bit of a social media presence, just so if anyone were to be in that situation, they could always reach out to a message, and then our youth leadership team can kind of talk them through and give them facts and whatnot. And what our Virtual Vaping Summit has done is it's kind of put those resources together in like a playback motion, so they're able to watch those at any time and, kind of understand the dangers of vaping and how it can actually affect you.
So, Miss Alicia, you're sitting over here quiet, but I know that with the at Sycamore Psychiatric, you're like, man, we've seen this since the day one. You know, you started the clinic, or all of you there that work there, and it feels like, you know, mental health is one of those things that is gaining more momentum in the conversation. Obviously, here on Good Things and other places, but how rooted is this sort of in our culture, specifically with our teens, and maybe, you know, what's been going on underground that we haven't really recognized when it comes to mental health?
Absolutely. So there's always been sort of a stigma around mental health. Conversations have not always been open. But what I can say, coming out of a really hard year for most all of us, one positive thing is that we're talking. When we look at our teens and what they've experienced this past year, just in their development, you know, teens are at the point where they're spreading their wings and they're flying, they're graduating high school, their sports. But what this past year did was it put a roadblock on all those developments. They were isolated, they were kept at home. So I think it's been a catalyst of opening up the doors for how do we deal with stress? And oftentimes they look to social media. It's really cool right now to vape, and how does that make you feel? Which is then leading off into bigger areas. So I'm encouraged that, you know, we're talking about it. We're getting the help that we need for our teens. And so it just starts with communication, and it also starts with parents being encouraged to help their teens right now.
Well, Jill kind of threw you under the bus and said that maybe you had a story connected to the mental health piece to this. So, of course, I don't want you to share anything you're not necessarily comfortable with, but why does the mental health piece connect with you so well?
Right. So recently I've had a really good friend. His name was Connor, and you know, he had mental health issues, but, you know, that couldn't be, you know, the main type factor of it. But basically, to sum it up, what happened is the way your mental health and drugs kind of play course is kind of just something that you feel like you need to just get through life. And, you know, what happens is the way drugs have become is that it's so hard to technically, you know, people are making these kind of drugs. You know, you're never going to get the right kind of drug if, you know, and sorry, it's just...
It didn't end well for him. Yeah.
It's really hard to talk about.
No,
and really, it was a situation where he was in a peer group, and we focus a lot of that on our youth leadership team. Will was talking a little bit earlier on peer-to-peer prevention. Well, he was in a peer group, and he decided to try something, and that something was deadly. And that is what we want to tell kids and to tell teens and to tell their parents. You know, we understand that children are going to experiment. They've been doing it from day one. But the drugs now are different than they were 20 years ago. And in his situation, in Connor's situation, that decision killed him because that drug was laced with, was it fentanyl?
It was fentanyl. It was laced with fentanyl. And
how old was Connor?
He was 19. He was my age, you know, graduated high school together. And the fact that someone can just take their life like that by just creating a pill, and you don't even know it.
Right.
And they've even found fentanyl in vapes in our local schools. So that really is a big message. I definitely want to work on suicide prevention because that is a definite need. But mental health, addiction, and really communicating to the public and to the community the dangers of these drugs, these pills that can be, you think you're taking a Percocet and you die.
Well, and I think there's two conversations, or there's a point where mental health can sort of, pivot out into two places, Alicia, because one is going to be like that stress management, that anxiety that may lead a teen to look for a coping mechanism. Sadly, they can't just go to, the cabinet and pull out and have a glass of wine shouldn't openly at home, or at least even have the frontal lobe to be able to understand the different kind of stress reduction, or even go take their credit card and go shopping like so many adults have the pleasure to do. So they are pushed underground to find things, to sort of help numb that obviously aren't going to be the best things. And obviously I'm so not encouraging teen drinking. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
You get what I'm saying with that. And and then the other piece to this is, okay, now that they have stepped over the line and have tried something, if they are in active addiction, that's a completely different type of mental health issue. So now we have something stronger there that's pulling at them and tugging at them every day. And we're going to keep tugging at this conversation, talking about mental health, specifically around our teens and tweens, coming up next.